All right, good morning. We're working on the monitor. We're getting ready to do an initial release for this app tomorrow. And so what we're going to be doing is adding our WebSocket server right now. We currently have the TCP server already created. It's done as a Windows, what is this, a thread, what is it, a worker project, a worker thread project. So it runs as a Windows service. So we're going to be making a second one of these for WebSocket. Actually, the WebSocket, we've already created the initial project for it here. It's an ASP.NET 3.1 web application project. And let me see, let me get that one a little bit hotter. And, oh, a little too much there. And so when I look at this, it should have, it should already have my, sorry, wrong project, this one. It should have WebSocketSimple that I wrote on it here. But this is called in the wrong area. So the first thing that we want to do is move our server up to the configure services. And then just a second. Because I could inject this, but I don't want to. I'll just do it like this, and then we'll leave the server there, and then this is where we're mapping our WebSockets here. So I'm just adding these fake connection strings at the moment. If I look at what I have for the TCP one, yeah, see, I'm not using anything special for those. So when we look at this again, and this could be what, an WebSocket server or something simple like that. So let me move this into here. We're going to make this service here. Can I do a web builder dot? Guess not. Okay, never mind. Scratch that. We'll leave this the way it was. And same thing here. Okay, we want to have our other events on here, so we have a server.connection event. And then we also have a server.error event. Okay, we need to capture these methods that we can unsubscribe them on a dispose. So if I look at my WebAPI project, here is OnShutdown, which I'm calling here. So we'll just copy this little bit over. This user service WebSocket comes from user services, and we haven't filled this up yet, so we'll look at that in a minute. And then additionally, the OnShutdown, which is just a private void OnShutdown. And we can set this variable like this. And then that's a static. Okay. And then we can make this a, I want to get rid of this and then destroy it. So if my server does not equal to null, then we can get rid of the events and do a server.dispose. Okay, on these we want to return a task.completed, like that. And finally here we can say my services.add singleton, which is my server. Okay, so this is now receiving my messages from my WebSocket client. I need to create that client still, but let's look at what the worker's doing over here. When I look at this, I need to have something that wraps this, I'm thinking. Just a second. No, I don't. Okay, so what we're going to do is here in the message event, the first thing I want to do is I want to make this a asynchronous task. And we want to switch on my message event type. Now, when I receive a message, if my args is a WS message auth event args, which it is, then we're going to try to get this object out by deserializing our alert DTO, which comes from our args.packet.data. And if that works, then you want to do your data transfer objects equals to, and now we need to add a data access layer. Second. Perfect. So to do this, what we're going to do is a services.add singleton. And this one's going to be an IMapper, and it goes to an automap.createMapper. And then we want to do a services.add_transient, which is going to be an iService data access layer to a service data access layer. Just a second. And then this one's fine. Now when I want to get my data access layer, let's go ahead and pull up Google here, and I want to say get service from the ASP.NET Core because I don't want to do it with DI. I want to do it with Okay, we're going to do this a little bit different, where I'm going to add a class here, and we're going to call this a WS server or something like that. I'm going to change this here in just a second. And I need to have an instance of it in order to inject it into here. So I could make a singleton of it up here. So over here, what we want to do is have a constructor which is passing in here a WebSocket Server. Like that. And we can make this iDisposable. And all we want to do here is if my server does not equal to null, then we want to do a server.dispose. And then we'll have our three functions. Okay. There we added it as the singleton because we need it referenced in here. And now I can just inject my data access layer. Like that. And then we'll do a if my data access layer is equal to null, then we'll do the data access layer dot dispose. And I see that this is a not equal to. And now what I'm going to do, that was fun, right, is I want to do a create alert for this, which is going to be a alert create request. And my alert type here is going to be my DTO.alert type. The message is the DTO.message. The status type is the DTO.status type. And this is a C.client application ID. Now in here, you currently have a user ID as a GUID, so that's going to be a problem. Same as it was before. So we'll do the same fix until I go in and fix these libraries. The other thing that I want to do in this is I also want to, at the end of this, do a await hub connection And we're going to invoke my request alert, which is the same thing that I have on the TCP server. Which means that I'm also going to need to have injected into this my hub context because instead of doing this through SignalR that way, I could do it that way. And then that would be a hub. Yeah, we do want to do it that way. So I want this to be a hub connection here, called hub connection. Okay. Just a second. And instead of injecting that, I'm actually going to create it. Right here. And I can just copy this stuff straight away. So I'm going to create a new public virtual asynchronous task here called start server asynchronous. And then the prefix is this. And it's WSS or just WS. And I want the one for the WebSocket server port. Wait a minute. Where's this being used? Because this is SignalR URI. Like that. And then you're going to connect here. And this is HTTPS because your WebSocket server is so I'm going to change this to be called WebSocket Handler. And now what you need is you need to have a service instance. So to do this, we can just again copy this. My service type here is WebSocket. Okay. And then here you're creating your service instance, which is what I need to have down here. Hub connection builder NuGet with URL missing. If I look at what I have on this one for my dependency, ASP.NET SignalR client. Oh, look at how old it is. It added the wrong one. Let's get rid of this. And add in Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.SignalR.client. Okay. We don't have a cancellation token. Yeah, it's invoke asynchronous there. Okay, we want to have a public virtual void called stop server. And this one you want to say if your hub connection does not equal to null, then you want to do a hub connection dot dispose asynchronous. And then you want to say your hub connection equals null. We're going to say stop SignalR asynchronous and then start SignalR asynchronous. And now this is where it gets a little hard. We need to update our library to use longs. So we're going to first open up this resources folder. And then I'll have to come in and make these changes later. But if I go to projects for WebSocketSimple, I want to get the one for middleware and server. We'll copy those into here. And so now when I look at my WebSocket packages, I can get rid of this middleware. And we are going to add in a reference to those two. And then in the middleware, I can get rid of the dependency on the server. And then I can rebuild everything. So in my event args, we're going to change this to be a client application ID. And it's going to be a long. And the same thing here. Client application ID, and then a long. That all looks fine. Here's your WebSocket connection manager. We want this to be a long and a long. This is now a client application ID. Okay. If I look at my user connection WebSocket, that has a number of these connections. So if you can return your client application ID like that, and then a null. This is for adding a WebSocket. Like that. User connection, we're going to make a new model for that. So all you want to have on this is a and then you want to have a long here for your client application ID. Like that. Got to get rid of some of these namespaces here. Now it says that this doesn't exist, but I could just add the reference to it. This one we need to add phs.core to it. Rebuild everything. So now, in my WebSocket server itself, we have to change a whole bunch of stuff. It'll only take a few seconds. But when I have my connect client, this is now going to be a long for my client application ID. And we'll change this to be send to client application and send to client application raw. So when we connect to this client, this wants to be a long for my client application ID. Okay, this one changed to be client application ID and then client application ID. Same thing here. Same thing here. And now this is a No, I thought for sure this was going to have it. User ID is what it has. So in my WebSocket, you're connected to it through the business logic layer, which is there. So this is now a long, and it's a client application ID. Send to client application. And then this one is a long for client application ID as well. Almost done here. And now in my WebSocket middleware, you're saying that this was getting your bot from this token, which is a bot WebSocket. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify this. And I'm going to make this a client application WS, and then a iClient application WS, and then we can delete the two bots here. So now here, you're going to say that this is a get client application, which is a iClient application. And then this one is a get. That's all I need. WS. So now this is a get client application asynchronous. And if it's null, then we're going to send this unauthorized string. Otherwise, we want to connect it like that. And this needs to be a long. So that's because you're calling this the WebSocket Server. But if you were to call this a WebSocket Server Auth or something, what am I calling it when I'm instantiating it? Just a WebSocket server. So in here, how is it connected there? I don't see it. There we go. Because I want to add a reference to WebSocketSimple middleware. And this should now be client application ID. It says that this one needs to have a NuGet package for the WebSocketSimple.core. And that's it. We'll give it a rebuild. And then back over where I'm setting up my dependency injection. Get client application asynchronous of my client application WS. So right here, and this one we'll do as an asynchronous task. And this is pretty straightforward, so I'm going to add my constructor in here, and then also the iService data access layer called service. And then when I do this, I want to do a await my service dot read client application by OAuth, which is just this token. And we can just return this. And we can do this because if I go to this object that I'm returning, I'm just going to have it implement this interface. Where did we were getting our instances inside of configure? Oh, you can just inject iService provider. And then this can be just a service provider dot get service of the type iService data access layer. Okay, and now what I want to do is we're going to make sure that we're running this app. Here. And then I also need to have a WebSocket client application. So I can do that just by copying one. This one here. And I can call this a WebSocket test. And in here, we're going to change this to be called and it doesn't look like I've yet created this package. So we're going to need to create a new package here, which is a class library. And I'm going to call this inside of the public, the Monitaur.WebSocket. And we can just call it Monitaur WebSocket. And we can copy this in. Now, this is Monitaur WebSocket. There currently isn't an interface on this yet. And your client was called a WebSocket client. So on this, we're going to add a NuGet package here to my WebSocketSimple.client. Like that. My port was, have I decided on a port yet? Nope. 6890. And this is now a WebSocket client. These are WebSocket, and I think it's an auth event args, if I may be not mistaken. Just moving this stuff through. Not all of it's going to be directly applicable. We want this alert. And that looks mostly done. So here we go. For our WebSocket client, we want to make sure we have a connect asynchronous here. So we want to have here a public virtual asynchronous task called connect asynchronous. And then we also want to have a virtual asynchronous task called disconnect asynchronous. And if my client does not equal to null, then you just want to do a client.disconnect asynchronous. And this one you just want to do this. Now, it's WebSocket, so there is no end-of-line characters. Okay. And when we do this, I want to know if I'm passing the parameters here, which is always going to be my OAuth token. And is it WSS? In our case, this one is no. And we'll make a second one, which is. If I look at my two clients, 6895, 6890, 6885, and then we'll have one here. Six, 880. And this one is WSS. Almost done here. Okay. And now this one is OAuth token and then false. And it's an asynchronous task with a connect asynchronous. Like that. We don't have any of this stuff, but this is a asynchronous again with the OAuth token, and then this is a false. This is a send asynchronous here. Which is a asynchronous task. And those are our two WebSocket monitors. Okay, so now that this is done over on our WebSocket client, we can now change this and we can extract our interfaces here. Okay, and then the same thing for the other one. We need to set them as disposable. Okay. And so now we have our iMonitor TCP, which is a iMonitor WebSocket. Add a reference here to WebSocket. When I look at this, we want to put this inside of the we're going to change this namespace to be WebSocket Client. Like that. Almost done here. So iMonitor WebSocket. And this is now a monitor WebSocket, which is the URL, the URI, and our port. And my port is going to be my globals dot and so now we need to create my WebSocket server port, which is four 44398. We'll make this one not SSL for the moment. Okay, like that. Okay, so I think that should do it. We can now test it and see if this works. So we're going to watch on the WebSocket server to make sure that we get our WebSocket middleware manager getting picked up here. Let's give it a run. Okay, this last one's our WebSocket server. We're not expecting anything to propagate off of it. Looks like that we probably got some kind of an error. So let me go ahead and just run this one. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's got the right parameters. Nothing's wrong. It looks fine. So we'll have to track down what the error is, but I will now give this WebSocket client a test. I currently don't have any, so we need to test out what's going on here. So let's go ahead and start adding services one by one. We'll start with the identity server. Oh, it's probably for sure this TCP server. Both of those seem to start okay. What about the Web API? That seems fine. So is it the WebSocket server? The only other one is this landing page. Which seems to be fine. So I don't know why it quit on me, but that's weird. Okay, let's go ahead and create our app here. And we're going to now jump into the new test app that we made. It says that we're logged in, and if I send an alert, didn't quite take. So we got to figure out why. .59460. It's using the WebSockets because you never did your start SignalR. So in the WebSocket startup, we never did a var ws handler which needs to be a server and then our data access layer. Just a second. Like that. So this is fine. And we also want to do a await my instance dot start SignalR asynchronous. I doubt it's going to let me do this. All right, it did. I was expecting that when we hit this middleware, I was expecting to get here. So let's try it again. Okay, so it kicked through. We do get our WebSocket requests. We're going to bring our client online. Which is this OAuth token. It says that I'm logged in, but I don't think it ever connected me. try it again. Okay, we try to connect to the test client again. There it is, it connected. We did get my client application, so we're already authed in. And now when I look over here and I send an alert, okay, let's see how close we got. So it's not writing it to the database. Let's try it again. So when I look at my client, it says that it was sent. Okay, so then back over here on the handler, it should be getting trapped in here. Yeah. Sending to the server. Which fires my event. We're going to get my identity and then the connection. And here is where it was failing. So it's not WebSocket servers not being registered to. But I thought you did it right here. WS message auth event args. Should be right here. So did the WS handler get subscribed? I didn't see where it got subscribed. So I don't see it firing this asynchronous call. The way I have it, I don't think this works. Okay, we'll try one more thing, which is, I wonder if it's because it doesn't know it's an action. Let me just try running this one all by itself. So is there an ASP.NET Core configure services async? All right, so we'll just make it real easy. We'll get rid of this async, and I'll just have it wait. Okay, so we'll log in here. Still never fired this, did it? That's real funny for me. Well, in that case, we're just going to do this. And I'm going to do a that could be why. So we're going to do a new data access layer, a new service data access layer with an automapper.createMapper. And then we'll just do that as a singleton. And then we're going to start this and do a services.add singleton to my WS handler. And then like we have in the Web API, I want to register this application on shutdown thing. Like that. We don't have a timer. And all I want to say is if my, and you want to have a private WS handler called handler. If my handler does not equal to null, then you want to do a handler.dispose. And then if my server does not equal to null, then we want to do a server.dispose. All right, now it should work. There it is. We're going to wait for it to start asynchronously now. We read our services. We create our new one because we don't have it. We make our prefix. We connect and start our hub, and it's good. Now I can connect to this here. That should have with automatic reconnect, yeah. And we need to get my token, which is over here. And then what we're going to do is create an alert. There it is. It's been received here on the debug statement. We've received it there, and there it is. And now if we want to double check that everything is fine, we can do the same thing again from TCP. There it is. And then as the final mode, here we can do it again from Web API. We can post a new alert here. I guess I have a delete on there too that I need to get rid of. when we look at this one, we can say 2, 1, and then a fake message, and then we send it, and there it is. Now my status type came out wrong, but that's because it allowed something that it's not supposed to. Yeah. So that's a note, is submitting from WebAPI, TCP, and WebSocket, make sure enums are all valid. And I wonder if I did it as a 3, if that would take. And it does. So there is no check at all on that right now. See? But that's all 3 of our transmissions set up. So that's great for tomorrow. And what I'm going to be doing is that we need to add in that validation that we just saw to make sure the enumerations are always at the right area. I need to add in filtering and then also dismissal of the messages. And then the ability to load historic messages. And then we need to make sure that everything is properly reconnecting, but I think it should be. And yeah, and then just some simple stuff with some hiding the data when it comes to like the OAuth tokens inside of the server. So thank you guys for staying with me today. If you have any questions, make sure you pop them out at our Discord, discord.pixelhorrorstudios.com. Also, I put all these videos up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. And actually, let me do one thing. We'll say that I might be back later today, but if not, I'm going to say that we'll be back tonight at like 7 o'clock p.m. PST. So thank you guys again, and I will see you later. Have a great rest of your day.